should be recording. Okay, so thank you very much for everybody joining us. This is the last of the ENIL-ECCL webinars on deinstitutionalization for this year. So for those of you joining us for the first time, basically we have been now with Nic Crosby, who is here, who is going to help also with moderating this webinar for a couple of years now, maybe for 3 years, if not more. 5 years. Okay, I'm very bad with timekeeping. We have been running these all sorts of webinars on the topic of deinstitutionalization, but in a very practical way, talking to people who are involved in deinstitutionalization projects, or more widely, deinstitutionalization reforms in their countries, or who have been involved in the past, talking to them about how it's going, what works, what is not, what they're struggling with, and basically learning from each other. So we have had, this is our 3rd webinar this year, and I'm sure we will continue also next year. We just have to discuss what exactly to focus on. So welcome everybody again. And today we're going to, we entitled this webinar, Operationalizing the new UN guidelines on deinstitutionalization, including in emergencies, the case of Sweden, Slovenia, and Scotland. I will say a little bit about these new guidelines in a minute, but basically, as we have colleagues here from Sweden, Slovenia, and Scotland, and they will all introduce themselves, and we will be discussing with them, and this is a meeting format, so Nic will also invite you all to join into a conversation as well. But before we get to that, just as usual, a little bit of housekeeping rules, not rules, just directions. There should be automatic captioning here, which you can enable. So for those of you who would find it helpful, it should be possible to enable it by clicking on the CC button at the bottom of your screen. If you would like to ask a question or make a comment, please either leave a comment in the chat box or click on the raise hand function, which is under reactions, and Nic is going to bring you in during the discussion. If you have any other trouble, technical, just please leave a comment in the chat. And yes, we are recording this webinar so we can share it also for other colleagues who are interested. You can, in terms of cameras, I think you can leave your camera on or leave it off, whatever you prefer. And if you would like to see the speaker more clearly, you can always choose the speaker view at the top of your screen. I think that's it. We all know Zoom very well by now. So I will give the word to Nic to introduce himself. And Nic, if you want to add a little bit more about the ENIL-ECCL webinars, and then we have the little introduction of the speakers. So over to you, Nic.
Cool. Good to see folk. Few familiar names coming up and people joining in. So it's good to see regulars and some new people as well, which is always good. I kind of reminded us it must be five years that have flown by. But I think we started in December 2017 with a meeting about just getting people around a table. Should we do this? And kicked off since. There's a whole page on the ENIL website with previous presentations, many of which have been given by people who are online now. And the last couple of years, we've taken to following pieces of work where people are actually getting on and closing institutions. And in the past, other people from Slovenia have kind of given an idea, but today we're joined by people from Crna and from Krasu, to actually share some kind of hands-on. This is the hard work that we're involved in. So it's really good to see you guys. Kind of one or two elders who've been through this journey before. Ritta up in Sweden, long time advocate of closure, and John in Scotland. So kind of got people who've been involved in the past and people who are actually grappling with the problems at the moment. So it's really good to have you all online. I've kind of mentioned who it is, but do people just want to say a quick hello? If I just go around the names as people are showing up on my screen. So Ritta, would you just like to kind of let people know who you are and why you're along today?
Okay. My name is Ritta Leena, and you can see on my how to spell my name. I'm from Finland, and I have been living in Sweden 50 years, and most of that time I have been working with disability issues in city of Stockholm, and 16 years as ombudsman for disability issues in City Hall in Stockholm. But the theme of the day is the most important part of my job is from 1990s, because that was the time we were working very much with how to close institutions after that legislation we had got earlier. So and when I became retired, for some years ago, Independent Living Institute and Adolf Raratska, who has been my co-operator a long time, he wanted that I should work a bit with Independent Living Institute, because he felt that I was in ideologic way on the same road with him, and I was very happy for that. And now last year we have been working with the report about what happened with institutional life in Sweden. How was that when it was like worse? What happened with legislation, important decisions? How did we move people from big institutions to smaller housing? And how it looks like today. In this report, we have also described what's important to work with just now, because everything is not heaven in our world in Sweden either. Yeah. So that's why I'm here now.
That's great. I'm glad you're along. I think everybody's probably going to tell a story of the challenges that are ongoing and the hard work that it's taken to get as far as they managed to get. Sarah and Goran.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, so we are working on the project of closing the institution in Krasu in Slovenia. And the project started in 2020, and I think we are hopeful now at the moment that it's going in the right directions. Of course, there are still many obstacles to overcome, and maybe we can share some more later. Goran, if you want to add anything.
Okay, well, as you know, we're working closely with Nic, and we've been to Scotland, to John and Francis, and I must say that we are very thankful to all of the international community that are helping us. Well, we have quite a short period to end this project, because we started as a project, we are a pioneering project, and we have this, how to say, it's quite difficult because we have only 3-year project, and our goal is to put 70 people out of the institution and to build or to start 15 units. So it's quite hard. We fell into the gap We're fighting with the prices, with the no housing. The market is very, very hard. And but the light, we see the light in the end of the tunnel now. So we hope to have the final 3 buildings till the end of this year, just to buy them. Well, we have to adopt them and so on. But it was very hard, because if you ask us, we spoke when we were in Scotland, we had only 4 buildings at the moment, but it's getting better now. So yeah, well, I was working the first part of the project, first year, 2 years. I've been to the program part of the project. Now I'm in the housing and the investigations. Well, but as you know, these projects are very turbulent, and the people are coming and going, and the ministry doesn't understand us. And okay, I can't talk about the malices, but also bonuses. But we are seeing the end now. So we will establish the things like, well, not just as in the way that we wanted, but they will be, and the things are working. The people are waiting, are eager to go out, and I'm also waiting till next summer or next autumn, when this will be, let's say, this first phase will be over. But okay, we're in the middle of the process, and I think I can say that it's going now a little better after all the peripheties that we've been through. So okay, for now.
Thanks, Goran. Jana, over to you.
Hi.
Just just a quick explanation.
Yes.
Your partners.
Okay. I'm Jana. I'm the project manager here in Crna, Slovenia. I can identify a lot with what Goran and Sarah said. We are on the same page. We do the same project. In Slovenia, it's the two institutions in closing. We have now, I believe, 18 units already booked somewhere in the nearest and far away area. Some of them are new buildings that are building right now. Some of them are houses that we bought for our users, and some of them are flats that we rent or buy. We have some people led the institution in the last year in support of personal assistance, mostly for personal assistance, and we are trying to do that individual relocations a lot more. But like Goran said, this real estate market is hard. We cannot find the rental apartment in local governments because there aren't any. If there is any, our persons, because it's only one that wants to live independently, it's not on the priority list. On the priority list are the families, the persons that are in risk, that need emergent relocation. So we are struggling, but I think we are doing just fine. We have the teams, 3 big teams. Now we spread those things on the 7 teams, employees and users working together. They are organizing their daily plans, their daily routine that will be happening in their new homes, new housings. They are very connected. Our users are really very connected with all local communities they are going to relocate. Weekly, we are having those workshops with the users. We are going in the local communities to some ferries, to some their workshops, to the libraries, on swimming in the pool. So we are doing a lot on this not housing part. How can I say? We are doing, yes, we are preparing our users for the relocation.
Okay. Yeah.
Right now here in the institution right now. We are in the third part of the project. Is the last year, the third year is running. The time is not our friend right now because it really is, yes, going really fast.
Yeah.
And when we are, like Goran said, we have to adopt some buildings, but we cannot get any constructor workers. The prices are very high. We are really struggling, like Goran said, no? But we are trying, we are doing our best. We are doing our best for our users, our persons that we work for. And we are also working a lot with, like I said, with the local community to try to do some personal financing for our persons, to try to help them. Like we manage this with one person that the local community agree to finance the part that they participate before in the institution that they are paying right now to pay their rental apartment. So we are trying to achieve that in other local community also. Our employees are connecting with the local community to try to implement that rule that they do in one local community to all our local communities. So we are going to try more individual relocations.
Brilliant.
Yes, we are also educating our employees on weekly basis, teamwork, odločanje s podporo. Goran help.
Supported decision making.
Yes, yeah, you understand. Yes, yes, we have a lot of such education for employees, and also for our persons, our users, persons for that we work for. We also educate them. We have a lot of conferences, run tables with relatives. 1 week before, we had a conference with in a local community with relatives that our persons will relocate there. So our team was community-based services. Here now in December, we also have some education for our family members of our users. So it's happening, yes.
That's cool. That's cool. I mean, I think what we'll when Ines goes through some of the global guidelines, some of the things that you guys are talking about actually relate really nicely to some of the questions we've got. So I think it brings it to life. I think it's really coming to you, John. But it's really fun having people actually engaged in the work at this moment, and people who are able to talk a bit about how it worked when they were taking this process forward. One of our most frequent contributors, John.
So thank you. My biography is very similar to Ritta Leena's. I've been a social worker for over 40 years. I was thrown into deinstitutionalization work about over 25 years ago. I'm retired, but I'm still working. And so I work with a colleague, Francis Brown, who I met in the course of deinstitutionalization in and around Glasgow. It's been really great this year meeting folk from Dalja, Krasu and Crna because, well, I say really great. It takes you back into some of the nightmares that you lived through when you were doing the work. But it's I suppose because it's a real kind of important issue for us, it's great to be working and talking with people who are pursuing human rights and individualization and community living in their own countries now. So yeah, it's really important work, and it's great to be part of the conversation.
Cool, thank you very much. Over to you, Ines, just a quick bit about the global guidelines.
Yes, thank you, Nick. And thanks to everyone for introducing themselves. So yes, as you all probably know by now, just recently in September, this Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities adopted the global guidelines on deinstitutionalization, including in emergencies. And the aim of these guidelines, which at ENIL we very much welcomed and also worked with the committee to support them in bringing about this document. The aim is basically to help countries around the world to do deinstitutionalization better, in short. I mean, the guidelines, one of the reasons, there are several reasons why the guidelines were adopted now. One is the whole impact of the COVID pandemic on people in institutions, not just disabled people, children, older people around the world. And that's why also the guidelines have a section on emergencies, you know, what to do with deinstitutionalization when there is a war, when there is a pandemic or some other, you know, natural disaster. So that is one of the reasons why the guidelines were adopted now. The other reason is that the committee recognized through the various country reviews that it has been, you know, doing over the years, that actually most countries are doing deinstitutionalization very badly. I mean, basically, instead of allowing people to live independently and supporting them to live independently, in many countries, people end up being moved from big into small institutions, from one type of institution to another. And if you look at the recommendations of the Committee on the Rights of People with Disabilities, many countries receive the same type of, you know, recommendation: stop moving people from big institutions into small institutions. So that's why these guidelines were drafted and adopted. And the process, for the first time, this process was actually informed by disabled people from all over the world themselves. So there were 7 regional consultations the committee organized, and over, I think, 500 people from around the world sent in what they think the guidelines should talk about. And I think, of course, the third important fact is that these are the first global, while we did have European guidelines on deinstitutionalization, these are the global guidelines on deinstitutionalization. And this is why maybe some people might find them a little bit general, but they do try to cover, you know, all types of contexts, cultural, I don't know, family. I mean, the situations are so different around the world, from countries where we have lots of institutions to countries where perhaps there are not so many institutions, but where people are institutionalized at home, you know, locked in some back rooms. So how do you give advice to all countries at the same time? So the guidelines really set out kind of some key principles that countries which ratified the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities really should follow. And they build a lot on the General Comment 5, of course, on Article 19. So with Nick, we were thinking, so this is a really important document, basically, and we should all, in particular governments, you know, should try to make sure that they are aware that they follow these guidelines when they are planning, you know, adopting the institutionalization strategies, allocating funding, etc. And with Nick, we thought it'd be really interesting to see how some of the principles of the guidelines work or don't work in practice, and, you know, what people involved and who were involved in the institutionalization reforms were struggling with. So we chose, and I will just share my screen for 1 second to go through what we will be going through today. We picked out, just a couple of principles, because of course we could, and we might still do that, probably, Nic, right? We could go through many more things from the guidelines. So these are the recommendations from the guidelines we picked, and this is just the text. This is not our interpretation. This is really the text, from the guidelines. So the guidelines say that the institutionalization goes beyond buildings and the reorganization of services. It must be focused on restoring autonomy, choice, and control of persons with disabilities, and it must be led by persons with disabilities. So that is one. The second principle we chose for today, we'd like to discuss with you, is that, it says that those involved in managing or maintaining institutions, or who are responsible for human rights violations, cannot lead deinstitutionalization processes. The third one is that countries should not create new barriers to those leaving institutions by attributing vulnerability or weakness in those little thingies to persons with disabilities. Assessments of capacities for independent living based on impairment are discriminatory and should shift to assessments of individualized requirement and barriers for independent living in the community. And the fourth one are the types of housing listed in the guidelines as being incompatible with the CRPD, and these include communal housing arrangements or assigned neighborhoods for those leaving institutions, housing bundled with medical or support packages, housing managed by providers that have managed institutions or conditioned on the acceptance of medical treatment or support services. So if the governments or local authorities really wanted to make sure that their deinstitutionalization processes are compatible with Article 19 and the Convention, they should be following these principles. And so I will now I will put the link to the guidelines in the chat, and I absolutely encourage everybody to read them. And as ENIL, we will do a lot more work around the guidelines. But for now, I'll pass the word to Nic, who's going to be taking us through these questions with these principles with some questions for you. And once again, just to encourage everybody who has comments or questions from the participants to use the chat box or raise their hand. So over to you, Nic.
Thanks, Ines.
I'm going to stop share.
Yeah, because we can watch people's hands go up. That's great. I put my finger up earlier just because obviously Sarah and Goran supported some of the people at Krasu to actually consult on those guidelines. So the people got their individual feedback, and it was all published on the UN website as well, or the committee's website. So it's really powerful seeing people's real voice and supporting that being heard at United Nations. Okay, so I mean, I could go around and probably each of you has got at least an hour's worth of information or ideas to share on each question. So I guess there's something about how we can keep it really focused. I'm looking at the first one, which is around, it must be focused on restoring autonomy, choice, and control. And I could just kind of do the eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Who's going to go first? If I pitch that straight to you, John, about this stuff that you were involved in about keeping autonomy, which is translates as people's power, people's sense of self-power, and choice and control at the heart of what was happening. And then we'll kind of go to somebody who's involved in the work now, and then to Ritta, and we'll just kind of interplay.
Yeah. When we started our work, we inherited a system of assessment of the people living in the hospital, which was quite negative about people's abilities and quite narrowly framed in terms of who people were. So one of our biggest issues from the outset was bringing in new workers and new approaches to planning for the future rather than assessing people for in terms of their deficits. What did people what did people want? What did people need? And so we did bring in to the dialogue from an early stage an approach that was based upon person-centered principles and values. In the midst of, it has to be said, the pressures of time and money that people have already spoken about, and the pressures coming down in my head as the project manager to do things more quickly and more cheaply. And so as you fended those pressures off, you were trying to create some space for the individual person to be seen as just as a man or a woman who, you know, on average had spent 20, 30 years or more living in the institution by that stage, and were not really seen either as fully human or fully capable of making decisions, taking control, having autonomy. Yeah, so changing the culture, I guess, around the conversations that were going on between the staff employed to work in deinstitutionalization and the people who lived in the hospital. I say hospital because that's the name that the institutions that we were working with at the time were part of the National Health Service. And that's why I say hospital, but they weren't hospitals really. They were just long stay collections of warehouses of people.
So John was mentioning, I come to you, Shana. If John's mentioning challenging the culture, the information that you have from the past is all about deficits and medical model stuff.
Yeah.
Thinking about the work that you're doing to support some of the people in the institution at Crna to have a feeling of being in control of their future, I guess, really. Does that translate okay? If it's words.
Yes, I have to say what we are doing for our persons to support them with their decisions.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. We have personal planning. As you know, we have key persons that are trying to put those goals in the personal plan to reality. We have some parliaments with our users on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, where they can express their feelings, their worries, or their wishes, what they want. We put this all on a paper and make some deadlines to make that true. We are putting a lot of efforts in the individual work right now. We are trying to, if someone wants to go for a walk by themselves, they can go. If someone wants to go to the museum, we are trying to make that happen. We are trying to let those group activities behind and listen to one person on the at once.
Yeah, oh, that's cool.
Yes.
Sometimes, isn't it? It's lots of little things mount up
Yes.
to a big change. But if
It
you
seems
just
that
say, we just let people are just going out on their own, then
yes.
well, actually, that doesn't sound like a big change, but that's a big change, and it happens
For one person, yes.
Yeah.
All steps, but for one person, that's a lot. If someone wants to learn how to ride the bike, we are trying to make that happen. No, we have also this easy reading. How is the professional word? We put some documents in the in the words that everyone understands. Yeah. So there, what are their rights? It's putting in closer to them so they can easily understand what are their rights. We are letting them to manage their daily routine more than before, to managing their financing more, but all with the support if the support is needed, of course, because some of our persons need a lot of support because they don't even know the worth of the money. What can they get for 10 euros? They don't know. They need the support, but we are teaching them. We have some classes for independent, independent teaching. Yes, I don't know what's the professional word for that. Yeah, when they are going to the local community, they are going to be living there. We are going for a walk from that location that is their apartment will be through all the town cities, so that can get to know the infrastructure, where the nearest shop is, where the post is, where the nearest bar is. So
a lot of it will be about giving people a chance to learn through experience.
Yes, yes.
Ritta, in thinking about what you've covered within the report, but also the work that you were involved in when it came to closing institutions in Sweden, what do you recognise that John and Jana have been talking about as something we did that too? And what did you do, or what did the people that you were supporting do in the institutions to help people have more choice and control?
I feel that I'm a bit old-fashioned in this case, because we were working with that for 30 years ago, and we institutions, those big ones, we are talking about places with 100 people in same, or 700 several hundred people in same places, and we were by legislation forced to close them year 2000. And that's why, so it was not only a local project we had to do, because we had a strong legislation that decided that institutions must be closed year 2000, and responsible, it was municipalities who became responsible to build up small units for those people who needed to move and wanted to move to their flats in small units. And in same time also, it's very important that we needed, it's impossible to be successful to move out from long life in institutions to society without support. You must have good support. And in same time, you decided to close all institutions in Sweden for people with different kind of disabilities. So we also got a law about 10 different rights in society, and there one of those very important things was a right to personal assistance. But we have also today, when we are talking about people who moved to small group home units, and when I say small, it's maximum 6 people in one. It's not allowed to have bigger than 6 people in one unit. Those people who make that choice, they are people with intellectual disabilities and people with autism. People with physical disabilities, we don't have any group homes or that kind of service solutions. In that case, if they need support, it's home care. But of course, in number one is to apply personal assistance. But legislation is very tough. Right to personal assistance, you must have very heavy needs. Otherwise, you can't get personal assistance. And there are a lot of people for instance, if we talk about people with intellectual disabilities, if they are walking persons, they don't need wheelchair support to move, they have not possibilities to get personal assistance, so they need support on some other way in society. Now, probably I was talking about things you didn't ask me, but I felt that I was forced to tell that it was not only a little part of Swedish society who had a project. We were forced to close all institutions in the same time.
I think, Rita, that you did answer the question a different way, because it's about the use of, legal rights as one of the ways of helping people have choice and control. So Jana and John are talking about what they did in the institution. You're talking about actually as a country, we put in rights, how they work.
I should like to add that we have a lot of job to do now in those small units to work and give people possibilities to really be independent and show their own will. And we are fighting against institution menus, because so soon you have several people in same place, you have a staff, and it's used to be so staff have regulated how we are going to live, and that's forbidden and that's okay and so on, and that's institution menus, and we have to still all the time fight against them.
Goran, Sarah, your thoughts? Kind of thing that go for it.
If I go from there where Ritta Leena ended, well, as you know, we have this short period of time. We had maybe in the 80s, we put all the users out of the hospitals to homes, which was quite innovative. It wasn't the deinstitutionalization, but it wasn't just hospital treatment of the users, and somehow Slovenia slept on that part. Well, now in these few years, even though we have 8 units out, not just for 2 years, but a few years, we also see that when you, not just we, also Hrastovec and so on, there are units out, and it's not something that is quite new and that we established this in the past 3 years, as long as the project is running. But yeah, when you start working and you're in the halfway, and you have units and you have the main building, and so you have mini institution, want it or not, because first thing is the legislation, which is quite stiff. It's not helping to the users to be quite independent and so on. Everything goes with the money that comes with the for services, which is packed in one pack, and it's paid. It's not directly paid to the users and so on. And always there behind all the things and all the processes is institution. And you can see also today it's hard to get also in this in units the institution out. We're like said, okay, we're running this apartment houses for years now, and you can see some improvement, but still you have mixing of the people working in the institution and then in houses, but you can still feel the institution. I think that over, let's say, in 5 years, what is the main goal that we come to end with the institutionalization of Dom na Krasu, and after 5 years, we are expecting to have 32 units and no main building, just the management and of the organization and people that are helping. That in the point where we will go through this, the things will go better, and we will say that we are going in the right direction. This in the meantime, it's quite hard, you know. First thing, how to tell the people, the workers, what is really going on, how to work with people, what the institutionalization is, how to tell them. We have a lot of teaching, we have courses, we have a lot of things is going on these 2 years. But one thing is when you're telling and you're trying to teach people, the other thing is what you do in the practice in the houses. So it's, you know, this process which is going on is good, but we're in the middle, you know. It's hard to see in this part, especially for the people who don't have, let's say, global view of the happening, what is really going on. And the other part is and the main part is for the users or clients. You know, they are still depending on workers, because when we are coming to community, we are now building the things in community, because in community there is nothing. The communities were always used to just send people to the institution and say that's it. And there are not as many services in the community, but the services we will have to establish the services in community. You know, okay, to take them a part of what is going on in community, you can take, or more or less, that is health services, not social services, you know. And so this, in this point of view, in this exact time, you know, after 2 years of the project, you know, as I said, even though it's going, some things are going on and the thinking is going on and so on, but the legislation is not going with the institutionalization. Then the time is not quite on our side, you know. We have 3 years for this project and so on. But okay, things are moving, but you can see where these problems are and how to put it through.
If just thinking about the next guideline that Ines suggested we discuss, it's quite fun having two people from institutions on to answer this one. So I'm going to start with you guys, because John and Ritta can say, well, we're not part of an institution, so that's fine by us. So the question is really around the actual process and the outcome, or the future services and future communities-based support that people need, isn't led by those who run the institution. So the wording that is on the guideline is those involved in managing or maintaining institutions or responsible for human rights violations, but we'll stick with the managing or maintaining institutions, cannot lead deinstitutionalization processes. I'm not asking you guys to do yourselves out of a job, but I'm wondering just your thoughts about why people might be saying that, I guess. Why might it be important that this process ideally shouldn't be led by institutions? Jana, Goran, Sarah, any thoughts on that? Yeah, go for it, Jana.
Yes, I'm just thinking, because from personal experience, it's hard to change the mindset. Yes, if you are working as an employee in the institution for a long time, you are used of the institutional rules, and it's hard to change that mindset, to let the people more independence, to give them just support they need. At the beginning of our project in year 2020-2021, I heard from our employees that said, I must change their bed, I must clean their room. So, does he has arms, feet? Yes. Why don't you teach him how to clean their room, not to do it for him instead? Yes, because employees said that they are on work, they have jobs to do that, they are paid for to do that. but we are trying to make those changes in their heads to teach our persons to do by themselves and give them support where they are needed, not to do by themselves. And it's hard for our older employees, not old on the age, but on the stage of employment. Yes, because they does that for 20 years. Every day is the same. They do something for the people, not to teach them. But we've seen changes in the past year. They let them to get for breakfast. They can go by themselves. They can choose what to eat. It might seem that small steps, but in the giant institution, that's not so small. It's the big step for someone, and let them to go to the shops for cola, not to go in for them instead. So yes, small step, but it's changing a little bit. Yeah, our mindsets are the main barrier, I believe. Yes,
that's spot on. I'm seeing Rita's indicating she's got a question. I was going to go to Goran, but I'll go to Rita and then come back to you, Goran and Sarah.
It was mostly comment. Sana, you were talking about that institution manuals for the staff, and we could see that when institutions became closed, we could see that many big part of staff in institutions were against closing institutions. And we could feel that also in municipalities, like me in the city of Stockholm, that they were not right people to take over and be staff in municipal small group homes, because they should go on and with the old-fashioned style. And sometimes we could meet staff. We said that it's better that you are not going on in this work, because you are not going to be interested about our way of working by LSS law, that law of rights for people with disabilities. And then I wanted also to support, you were talking about finances and so on in institutions and institution-like group living. One interesting thing is that in Sweden, and especially in big cities, we started, Stockholm was one of them, who started to give finances to group homes per person. You made an investigation about each person's needs, and then that group home in that case got finances for that single person's needs. So they didn't got finances for how many people are living there. They got finances for each person's needs. And that became very, very important to give possibilities to give individual support.
Yeah. Thank you, Rita. Goran?
Can I?
I'll go for it.
Yes, for Rita, question for Rita. Who gave them those finances? For
municipalities.
Municipalities, yes.
Yes.
And the persons that live there in small houses are paying for the cares individual, or the package of care?
They pay only rent and for the apartment there, and also for food, but also in Swedish social security system, they get money for the rent from social security system from state. If they know how, they don't have finances, private finances enough. So they don't have to say that I don't have money enough to live in that group home. In that case, we have social services for that. Yeah. And security system.
Cool. Goran, just going to, Jana's spoken about institutions not being in charge.
Yeah.
Rita's kind of talked about the similar answers, but from a different perspective. And Sarah, both of you, your thoughts around the process being led by institutions, or should they not be led by institutions?
Yeah, what I was thinking was that it is, for me, it is a thing of trust, actually, of believing that your life can get better. And, people, living for many years in institutions, I think they were let down so many times that they won't believe that the same people giving them some sort of, services, the employees can actually, they don't trust them, and they don't believe that change is going to happen, or that the life is gonna get better. And so, yeah, of course, I mean, new people have to come in. I think that here peer support is very important, and this is also maybe something that we are lacking. And you can see it, on daily basis, who goes to whom for any kind of help, support. And I think that, the successful, really successful, experience that we had was individual work, one person going to one person, deciding really to go outside, to not to have anyone from the institution involved, in the next step of their life. And yeah, for sure. And even, a small change of even leadership, management, or, or any kind of, people, maybe things, the method of work, changing, this can lead to changes in their life of people. So yeah, for sure.
Cool.
If I put it like this, we have to close the institution first, because this is the main problem, because institution is working, it has power, and it's influencing to everything, to all the steps of what we are doing at this moment. Legislation must follow, or not just follow, also lead the deinstitutionalization process, and this is, I think, the main goal that we have to achieve. That is, legislation will be changed. As I said, in Scotland, in Sweden, or because legislation changed, forced the institutions to close down, and then everything went their way, because now we have institutions are leading the process, but the process won't be finished. It will never be finished, but it won't go a step further until the institutions will be closed.
Yeah, there's something, isn't there, about you guys at Crna, you guys at Krasu, you've been kind of put your hands up, yes, we'll close. And then you can't kind of say, well, actually, somebody else is going to do it for you.
Yeah.
But what you are doing is showing why actually a really strong presence from outside of the institution in the long run, when it comes a national piece of work or a national program, it needs to be led not by people with the kind of mindset of people in the institutions. I thought, Jana, you answered the question really spot on. Actually, it's that thinking. And that's the bit that's at the root, and then Rita was saying it, you guys have been saying it. I think that bit sits there really strongly. I was going to say to John to join in. John's just had to drop out for a minute to take a really important phone call for himself. But thinking more about the next point that was raised was, or the next global guideline, was kind of that thing about, in my brain, it's from the medical model of assessment. So all the things that are wrong with you, all the things the psychiatrists say, all the impairments, that list of things that are really difficult. And actually it's saying, well, let's just park that for a minute and let's look at actually who you are and the impact of the world around you. And I guess most of you, and I'm not so sure about where Rita is with this and how people were supported in Sweden, but I know both Jana and the team there and you guys at Krasu are doing quite a lot of personal planning. Yeah, and that would be the different way of doing things, isn't it? Do you want to just explain a bit more about that personal planning? I don't know. We'll go to you guys first at Krasu.
Okay, well, also personal planning, it's not something that we started with this project and now. It was also before, but maybe not so, and in this way we are doing now. It was somehow have from the staff, from employees, have from the user. Now we went all to the user. You know, it's user's will that it's the emphasis his product, his plan, and that's a big change, you know, because we're looking to what somebody wants, what somebody really wants, what somebody wants to do, and so. But okay, this is one part. We are still here in Duturlje. Duturlje is a very small place. Everything you do, you have to travel at least 20 kilometers or to a bigger town, you know, and it's quite hard, you know, because what I would like to, yes, of course, but you have to travel 20 kilometers. Okay, we're shortage of cars, but this is not the main problem, you know, because we're now going. We have in Postojna, we have a lot of things more to do because it's bigger town, or it's Sežana, you know, and there people in the units can do much more, but it is starting. It's not also, as I said before, a bit of institution is still there in Sežana or in Postojna, because the main institution is here. The people are coming from main institution and they are employed to the small place, and you have still this quite big impact to the workers and to the users. You know, we still don't have. You know, when you come to a city, you know, a lot of people would like to have some employment, but well, how to employ them, where to employ them, because you have problems with legislation which is not allowing. If you employ them, you know, they lose all the support which have now, because we have a package support. It's not individual and so on. Yes, it's okay. Some things are done, but not all the things. So we still are mixing things among them, and it's sometimes you can understand what is going on, and it's hard for users. Okay, employees is different part, but for users, because okay, well, I would like to work something. I would need some money. I would do something, because I can not stay just in the apartment all day and watching TV or so. You know,
I think there is that thing, isn't there? It's where when you're planning and asking people about their hopes for their future, and then you've got to do something about helping those hopes become real, and that's the unending challenge of doing really good planning. I would like to debate, Goran, having been to Crna and to Krasu, the roads are a lot better to get to Krasu than the mountain road that you have to go up to get to Crna. So I think the closest facilities to Crna are probably in Austria or Hungary, actually. But Jana, your experience of personal planning?
Yes, I must say that we have some great experience with personal planning. We done this before the project started, because our legislation is telling us to do IP. We said IP, individual planning. Now we are just have a new word for that, personal planning. We have before individual plan, now it's personal plan. And it's quite going to reality, the goals in the personal planning. And we kind of noticed with our persons here in the institution that got more empowered, they demand more. Because some of them are living in the institution for 20, 30 years. And at the beginning, they didn't have such a big wishes, big needs. They didn't know what to expect outside, not outside of the institution, but in the individual apartment, what to wish. And now when are we talking with them one-to-one, we tell them, you can express your wishes, your needs. And they are starting to begin more demanding. They want those goals in the personal plan to get to reality. And they are asking weekly if some plan, some goal did not come true, how are we going to do that? They participate. So they became quite equal partner in realizing this personal planning, yes. And we are trying our best. We have a lot of personal plans for our persons, I think 130. We have 150 people living in our institution. Almost most of them have personal planning that are going to reality. They are connecting with their key persons. The key person is behind their personal plan, and they are managing that personal plan. They including other employees to achieving goals of this personal planning. And this personal plan in our institution is also the basics for this resettlement, where they want to go, what they will need in the community, what we must provide for them in the community. So we are we adopt this, the employees adopt this personal planning.
Cool.
Like I said, it's not. It didn't start with the project. We are doing this long years ago.
That's cool. I've got a hand up from Ines, so it might be a question.
Thank you, Nic. No, I just wanted to comment because from what also Goran said, it strikes me really. I mean, a lot of the countries, unlike Sweden, a lot of the countries are doing deinstitutionalization not as a decision, we will close down all institutions by this and that date, but they're especially also using EU funding. They are giving money to those institutions, let's say, who are willing to close down or who they choose to close down. And you can see how it's a problem when, the other things are not there, because also this personal planning to me, I mean, it's, you can plan all you want, but I mean, as Goran says, people can say, I want to work, and there is no work, so what do you do? Or you can just give people the option, choose between these three, what is your plan? And then that becomes their personal plan. I mean, the whole idea, and this is also mentioned in the guidelines, is sort of that you put people back on their feet, you give them money, you give them something to do, you give them peer support, you give them somebody to be there by their side, not somebody from the institution, but somebody they trust, a friend or somebody from an NGO, I don't know, some type of friend or mentor. And I mean, none of these things are really, I think, happening in these countries, really, because you don't have the legislation in place, you don't have the service in place. So yeah, this personal planning is a bit, I mean, I don't know, I think there's still
it's not my job, so
but maybe Ritta Leena, yeah, it would also be interesting, because in Sweden, I'm not going to take over from you, Nic, just because Ritta Leena, you also said that some people ended up going into these small units, right? People with intellectual disabilities. So even despite this strong legislation, it didn't really guarantee everyone independent living, and even nowadays it still doesn't, does it?
Is it my turn?
Yeah, that's for
Nic?
you, Ritta Leena.
Yeah,
that was
yes.
And I stop here.
I wanted to say also some words about individual planning, because it's included in Swedish legislation. If you are living in those small units, you have a social worker who is responsible to give you possibilities to, of course, you must be there by yourself if you want to have some more who is with you, and you make a personal plan for each of people living in those units. That personal plan is also then connected to finances to that place. So if that works perfect, so you can also get resources for your dreams. But then I must also say that all those rights in LSS legislation that was decided in same time you should make a plan for closing institutions. Now, later on, we have seen problems because administrations have been more tough to decide for different kind of support to people who have their needs. You have made financial cuts in state level, in the municipalities, and it's many people who got resources and rights, for instance, for support following you to lesser time activities. Nowadays, it's many people who doesn't get that decision. You have perhaps had that kind of support before, but now after different kind of financial cuts, you say, no, you don't have right to this support any longer. And that's why we are, who are interested about independent living ideas, we are worried because many of those rights you decided in LSS legislation for people who are living outside of institutions, many people have lost their rights to that support. And that's why, as when I said in the beginning, we are not living in heaven in Sweden either. We have closed big institutions. Many people with intellectual disabilities, they really still apply to have their apartments in small units, maximum 6 people in one. But many people are really fighting for their rights.
Yeah, I was interested in something, and it's because I know that it's a challenge for you guys in Slovenia as well. You were saying, Ritta, about personal assistance being more difficult for people with intellectual disabilities to get at times. I'm thinking that that's a challenge that you, Jana, and the guys that you're supporting to move on are going to face, and similarly for the guys that you're supporting, Goran and Sarah, the people with psychosocial disabilities or mental health support needs. It's something I've encountered quite often, is that personal assistance works really well for some, but for others it's not so well developed. I mean, we're lucky in the UK, we've kind of got past that bit now, and a lot of people have personal assistants who've got intellectual disabilities. But it's interesting that it's a challenge in Sweden, but it's also a challenge in Sweden, a challenge in Sweden and a challenge in Slovenia. All these S's today: Scotland, Sweden, and Slovenia. Just interested in thoughts around that, and because it does move us on to the last point, which is around housing and support, and actually knowing that one of the conversations that we had both with you, Jana, when you were over in Scotland, and with you, Goran, in Scotland, was around that divide between housing and support. Making and trying to separate those out so that you didn't have a team that was linked to a house, you had a team of people linked to a person or support people. And it's a great time for you to rejoin, John, because I know this is a big thing for you and Francis as well. And we spoke a lot about that when everybody was over in Scotland earlier in the year. So hesitate to put you on the hot seat, John, because you've just come back in. But the question is, it does include the bit around compatibility, but I was trying to pick more up on that need for the split between housing and support, because that's that bit about buildings-centered or people-centered services, isn't it? You're on mute, John.
We were tuned into that principle somehow or another when we started doing the work. Now, I think influences upon us at the time would have been through Peter Kinsella's work in supported living, where the separation of housing and support was a big issue, an important principle. So we were up and running with that quite quickly. And I think the advantage, there had also been some financial incentives in the local Scottish system for a while that made it prudent to do that as well. But yeah, I think we always felt it empowered the people themselves, because if they fell out with a landlord, they still had their support provider, and vice versa. If they fell out with their support provider, they weren't forced they weren't made homeless or forced to leave their accommodation. So that thing about, not being subordinate to a powerful body, but having relationships with your housing provider, relationships with your support provider that were and going along with that, I guess the importance of security of tenure in your accommodation, that this wasn't a short-term fix, but that this was you had a right to a home, and you'd right to remain in that home unless you did something pretty disastrous. So.
Yeah, that's cool. I'll come to you at the end, Rita, because I think you'll have some interesting reflections, because you've had quite a lot of people moved into small group homes in a sense. Thinking about both you guys in Crna and in Krasu, it was something that I know that we spoke about in the autumn when we were over in Slovenia, Goran, but also we spoke about when you were over in Scotland in October, Jana. How do you feel about that split between the housing around, building-centered support or people-centered support? And I don't expect you to solve the problem in a month, okay? But it's more, what's that made you think about how you're arranging things now?
Yeah, well, I was impressed to see what is going on in Scotland, because the institutions in Scotland are lost their power, and it's more people support than institution, and the whole community is working in all the matters, you can say, because it's hard to divide. We're still dividing what is this is just for your kind of people, this is just for disabled, and you have institutions which cares just for one group of people, and the institutionalization is working less on the institutions, and this power and employees and everything, all the support, all the local support, all the community support is working differently. And I guess that's the goal if we want to lose the power of these institutions, which are, well, more or less you can say also that are grabbing the power, because they want to have, well, I have so many employees, we have to work that, because if I don't get enough money, I won't be able to have that number of people employed, and so on, and this what is going on in Scotland. For me, this is goal to achieve, to decrease the power of institutions, to work in the community, to improve the community health, and this is, let's say, ultimate goal to achieve, But as I said, we are in the beginning of this. It's a long process. We have to understand that our projects are long, 3 years. They said, some of the people said, okay, they moved in 2 years in Czech Republic. People, yes, because the castle went to ruins, you know. They had to move them in 2 years, but the truth was that when we came to Czech Republic, they needed 7 years to re-accommodate the 42 people and to establish all the things around, you know. And we are quite hurrying now to do that. And as I said, the legislation is not following. As I said, it should lead the things, but it's not also. It's not even following all the process we are making now.
That's cool. Jana, sorry, I'm just keeping an eye on the time. I really want everybody to have a chance to contribute. Thoughts from you, Jana?
Yes, I can repeat Goran's words. We are at the beginning, but like I said, we are in a big process. We are noticing some progress in this process in the short 2 years. Like you said, we were in Scotland, and you said you begin to move people from the castle to small units, like we are doing right now. And this is the beginning, one step that is going to lead to the more independent living of our persons. We have to start somewhere because there are no apartments available for each person. So we have to start with those small units. We have to start to empower people that were living long years in the institution to learn them how to live in the community. We have to do some units that are on the way, that are not the institution and not quite independent living that we want to get there. It's something in the middle, but we have to start somewhere. And I agree with Goran, it's a long way. And I believe that in 10, 20 years, we are going to have that mindset that you in Scotland, because there in Scotland, it's you are living this thought of independent living.
Yeah. I mean, we have lots of problems too. But what I would say is, yes, we did move lots of people into small group homes as the institutions closed. But right from the start, in the work that we did, there was that separation of housing and support in terms of who was responsible for what. And the institution wasn't the landlord, nor was it the service provider. So that gave us a good impetus right at the beginning. You know, that makes sense.
Yeah. Rita, thoughts that, in a sense, thinking about what Jana and Goran are talking about, the DI process in Sweden kind of moved people with intellectual disabilities into small group homes, and there's not been a move on from that. So I guess thoughts on what you're hearing, the split between housing and support, but also how that can help move people on into more independent living and less group home living.
I can say that one of our challenges today is also that people who have moved to those small group homes, they have to be able to go on and move on to own flats in future. So they should exercise, have support to have more knowledges how to be more and more independent. But we can feel that many people who have moved to those small units, they stay there for longer time. Sometimes it's nice when they get in love, because when they have a couple, they says you are not allowed to live in units when you are a couple, and then those lucky people moves to their own flats. So love makes difference. But when I'm listening Goran and Jana, so I am also thinking, you are talking about your project. How does it looks like? I'm interested to know, how does it looks like in your countries all over? And do you have several projects going on? how does legislation from the state looks like? And in same time, I want to ask, do you have any plans anywhere to follow up number of big institutions, and their size in European countries? Because it's also important to point out how many people are living in big institutions, and how to start small steps to right direction, because perhaps it's not reality to dream about that everyone should move to their own apartment and have necessary support for that. So I'm very interested to know, how does it look like in all European countries?
Thank you. Yes, I'm not sure how this in other European countries looks like, but in Slovenia, our two institutions, Domna Krasu in Crna, are getting funds for this project from Deinstitutionalisation, but we are trying to spread that thought, that process that are happening in our institution to other institutions. We are, the employees are going to other institutions that are similar to ours. We are 5 institutions for persons with disability, and we are going visiting them and to talk about, discuss about our process, and wanted to encourage them to go on this path, to go on this, to step in this process of deinstitutionalization in other institutions. And I think other institutions are very keen on, is it the correct word, keen on, it's enthusiastic on what are we doing, and I think they are going to follow, but they still don't know how to, but some of them are making some small steps. We are giving them our knowledge that we gain through this process, through the project in those 2 years. We are connecting with other institutions. We are giving them our documents, how to start some process in this way. We are applying on other projects. These are mostly for housing, to get some funds for new housing, but this is also needed. The housing is are also needed, because we have now the capacity for relocate about 100 people from our institution. We need some capacities for around 50 people to relocate out of this big building, and it's. I just found out that there are some European projects are coming soon on the national level, and we are going to apply for this project to build or to buy some housing for our persons also. So yes, that's a good good news.
Well, I guess it's good news as long as it's not big group homes.
No, we are. Yes,
I'm playing each other.
Yes.
I've got an eye on the time. We've got 1 minute, and I know there's a couple of people leaving. And I'm also aware that we've not managed to give people a chance to ask questions. And we've got 1 minute. Well, we've got less than a minute now. I'm aware that Antonia's made a point about moving from different screens. I'm not sure if that's the display that you have, or that's because we've been whipping across between Sweden, Slovenia, Scotland, and different places.
No, it was not about it. It was about the DI process shouldn't be at all about relocating people from one place to another.
Yes. No, I
And
think
the global guidelines, there is a huge gap between the global guidelines and what every country really does as a DI process. And what annoys me the most is that You call it the DI process. It isn't. You should find another name for it.
Because, and you make that point because really it's just from one institution to another. That's what you're seeing happen.
Yes, with all this philosophy of an institution, it doesn't matter if it is relocated to a small group house. You should ask the persons living in institutions. It is something that I do every single day, although it's not my job to do. They don't even want to move to smaller group homes. They just want to get free. Nothing more, nothing less. Thank you.
Oh, that's cool, Antonio. I think I think that's
short,
go for it.
short answer, yes, maybe. Well, we are looking at this time because we are buying now houses and they will be ours. But in long term, we see these houses and this housing as floating. So the people which will come to these houses won't, well, except those who will be with big disabilities and so on, which won't be able to be in flats. But long-term goal is to have rented places, to help to rent places for people, and not to have them in an institution, but that they can rent and live on their own with as small support as possible. And this is our goal, let's say long-term goal. Yeah, because now when we are buying these places, yeah, it's institution. It's just moving.
You shouldn't segregate people about their disability, whether it is a big disability or a small one, or a mental impairment, or something else. This is a main principle, and you have to follow it. You are obligated to follow it. Yeah. Sorry for.
No, Antonio, I think you make a really good point. There's something about, we can talk about the process and everything, and we forget about what it's actually about for people in their lives. And we can think of some of the solutions that we come up to aren't what people would choose. They're just the best solutions that we can do. And it's an ongoing challenge. And I think the biggest thing is we all keep our eyes on where we're going with this. And aim for, escape plans. We should be talking of personal plans or escape plans. They're escape plans from institutions, and they don't mean going back. We're well over time. I'm aware there's a big conversation coming up in the chat that was raised by Zuzana about the stories in the Czech Republic recently about someone being murdered in an institution. That happened over a year ago and has only just come to light because of an investigation by a journalist. There's been a discussion that's going on now about where parents have killed their children because of the lack of awareness of support. So it's a really distressing conversation, and I don't want to ignore it, being there in the chat boxes. And I think we all are aware that institutions are a failure, and institutions do bad things to people. And when they're the only thing ahead, a lot of parents worry about what can happen to their children as well. I want to hand over to Ines. A big thank you for all the conversation and all the input. I think we could probably fill up quite a lot longer with questions and answers from people on the floor, especially as what's coming out in the chat now. But I'm going to pass over to Ines to round up.
Thank you, Nic. Sorry, I have also been playing with these pins, so somebody might have actually felt very dizzy from just my pinning. But I just wanted to the end, I think also in support of Antonia's point, Adonia's point, there is, it's clear that we operationalizing the deinstitutionalization guidelines, as we call this session, is quite hard, and we still have a huge gap between the principles set out in the guidelines and what is happening in reality. And some of the things that people involved in deinstitutionalization projects or other reforms are facing. So I think that kind of is, I would say that is the conclusion of our session. It has been really good to hear from everyone and to discuss all these points. And I think we should be all thinking about how we can really, how we can avoid, you know, all the mistakes that, I mean, there is no reason why people should be moving into group homes and then long-term possibly someday, you know, be able to live independently, because the human life, of course, is limited. And these people will not, I mean, people living today will not see that long-term end. It might be some new people, but not them. So we should be thinking really how to make sure we do the right thing right away, right? So that's in conclusion. We will be thinking with Nic about how to continue these conversations, and I mean, maybe also I mean, I would encourage everyone to let us know if there is anything, you know, they would find helpful. Of course, we cannot magic up social housing, or, you know, but some things perhaps we can help with, or discuss, or bring people together to share what worked for them and their learning. So I would end here also by thanking everyone. And Nic, do you want to say a final word as well?
Well, big thank you. Would welcome anybody who wants to put their hand up and help Ines and I with the coordination. And also some discussion around topics. We've tried different ways to share the story. It feels really powerful coming back to the same stories and following you through. So thank you very much for the guys in Crna and Domna Krasu for being part of this, because it's great having people actually tackling the challenges head on at this moment in time. It would be really good to reach out to other people in the similar situation as yourselves if we can find some. Thank you very much. Wishing you all the best for 2023. See you in the new year, if not before.
Thank you.
Everyone, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye now.
Cheers, John.